I mean, this past week, every week now is just absolutely huge. And I was reflecting on what Lynn had said about 3 weeks ago, which is that anybody who says that they can tell you what's going to happen between 3 weeks ago and the election is totally out of their mind, because we're in a domain where we're at a break point of many different aspects of the collapse simultaneously. It is a dark age. I mean, people may have heard now the number of suicides per day has surpassed the number of fatalities in car accidents for the first time. We now have more across the board. Yeah. No, this is in the United States, across the board. More people are committing suicide than are dying in car accidents. And as people know, because this has been going on for some time, there's a new type of suicide homicide. They're calling it familicide. There's just case after case where people go in, kill their whole family, kill their husband, their children, and themselves, or their wife, their children, and themselves, or their mother and themselves, because people feel that hopeless. And I have to say that the choice of presidential candidates does not do much to alleviate that situation. I mean, what LaRouche said the other day is that a drunk crossing the street is better qualified than either Romney or Obama. But if Obama wins, we are finished. And he won't wait, because a victory for Obama November 6th, remember when we had advance warning. We knew that W. Bush was going to go for cutting Social Security. So we had launched that campaign before the election, and we were ready to go, you know, before he announced that he was going to do it. But you remember when he won the election for the second term, he said, I have a mandate, right? I can do whatever I want. So Obama, whose ego is like even 50 times, yeah, he wins the election, forget it, forget it. Conversely, Lyndon also said if he loses the election, that will go a great way in containing him for the rest of the year, because he will know, or his handlers will know, that he does not have a mandate, right? If he loses. We have to defeat him. We have to defeat him so we can live to fight the next guy. I mean, that's the only way to think about it. Right? I mean, the best thing, of course, and what I want to go through right now is that what's unfolding with the Libya events is the real possibility for impeachment or forced removal of Obama, because this thing is just exploding. And I don't know if people know, you've probably heard the quote from Shakespeare, "Murder, though it hath no tongue, will speak." Or what was famously the play by Friedrich Schiller called The Cranes of Ibycus, where you have this great poet named Ibycus, and he's on his way to the Colosseum where there's going to be a great poetry competition, and he is beloved. And a band of highway robbers attack and kill him. And as he's dying, he looks in the sky and he sees a flock of cranes flying overhead. And he says to the cranes, "Avenge my death, avenge me." So then the scene shifts and you're at the poetry festival. And it's the open Coliseum, and everybody's very upset. They're saying, "Where is Ibycus? Where is Ibycus? Did you hear what happened?" And then they find out he's been killed. And Schiller describes it as the Erinyes, like the angels of justice, this very incredible tension in the crowd. Ibycus was murdered, Ibycus was murdered. And there's a shrieking of these angels of justice. And then just at this moment of incredible tension, the cranes fly over the crowd, and someone says, "Oh, the cranes of Ibycus." And then everyone goes, "Grab him, that's the killer," right? Because he gave himself away in that moment of tension. He sees the cranes and he can't, the cranes of Ibycus, so he identifies himself and is captured. And in a sense, this is what Obama has done now by lying about what happened to our ambassador and the 3 other Americans who were killed in Libya. Because you remember immediately after it occurred, what were we told? Well, there was just a spontaneous demonstration of a bunch of enraged, crazy Muslims who saw this evil movie and they were reacting, and it just happened to be that they were reacting on September 11th, and the movie came out 6 months earlier, but somehow this was what we were, right? Then, all of a sudden, the London Independent, Barack Obama, the State Department, Hillary Clinton had 48 hours notice. And today we learned that actually, not only that, but they were warned. It says a senior Pentagon source has confirmed the Obama White House received a detailed warning of a pending attack where they even identified who would be the perpetrators on September 11th. Okay, so they were warned in advance. Okay, then you find out that not only was it not that the demonstration somehow people, you know, and when you go to a protest, don't you always carry rocket launchers and AK? I mean, you go to protests and you're ready for anything, right? I mean, it was so ridiculous. So not only did this not come as an outgrowth of a protest, we find out now there was no protest. There was not even a demonstration. It was simply an attack on our consulate. And then you find out, because you can read the letters from US senators who are now getting very angry, and we've been told that there are 7 or 8 Republican committee chairmen in the House, because that's Republican, all the chairs of committees are Republicans. They would come back to DC in a flash to get to the bottom of this. In the House. Oh, in the House. And Senator John Kerry, once again, remember he was falling over backwards to make sure Obama had permission for unconstitutionally bombing Libya for 250 days. Well, Kerry, they were going to begin an investigation and say it would take 30 days. Senator Kerry said, oh no, of course we should investigate, but you know, the normal State Department procedure is 60 days. Well, 60 days is after the election. So this is Senator Kerry once again covering for the British Empire, covering for impeachable offenses by the president. So at any rate, what comes out is senators and members of the House are now writing all these letters demanding investigations. One letter, which I found particularly damning, was the letter from Senators Corker from Tennessee, and I forget the other one, to Hillary Clinton, where in the letter they have a chronology of violence in Benghazi. So it turns out in June of this year, there was already an attack on our consulate. Later in June of this year, there was an attack on our consulate in Benghazi. Then there was an attack on the British ambassador and his or her convoy. Then in August, there was an attack on the Red Cross in Benghazi. So they say, given that you had these repeated attacks in this city, we find it particularly odd that the State Department wrote to request a waiver to not have the normal Marine Guard security, but to contract out with a British firm called Blue Mountain, which has a policy of not offending people, so therefore they have bulletless security. So in the city where you've had 3 prior attacks since June, our State Department is requesting permission to take down the security and hire a foreign company to do it with no bullets. Yeah.
Yesterday's Times also reports that they can't proceed with the murder investigation because they can't get in there. They can't get into the area because security is non-existent.
Right. That would make sense. I don't know, did people hear that back there? Rick said it's reported in the New York Times they can't proceed with the investigation because security is, they can't get in there because there's no security. So, yeah. No, I'm saying that the apparatus that ran the original September 11th attacks, which is British and Saudi, was behind this. And that you have an arc of cover-up starting with W. Bush, who was president during the first 9/11 attacks, which LaRouche warned about. Many of us, not everyone here, but some of us in here were handing out leaflets that morning warning of a terror attack on Washington. We thought it would be DC and it was the Pentagon, but it was New York. But W. Bush had redacted from the official congressional inquiry 28 pages, which document the role of Saudi Prince Bandar, who was then the Saudi ambassador to the US and who was funding 2 of the 9/11 hijackers. He and his wife, through Riggs Bank, were paying for their flight training, their rent, their living expenses. And this probably, I don't know what's in the 28 pages, but what we have since found out is there was a deal between London and Saudi Arabia, actually going way back to Thatcher, that the Saudis would ship the British an entire tanker of petroleum a day for free in return for weapons, billions of dollars worth of weapons from British aerospace. Yeah, I'm sure it's more than that. And what this would do is, one, because if you look at the price of petroleum over this number of years, it creates a huge slush fund. So they have a huge slush fund to run terrorist operations. 2, if you ever wondered how all these little splinter groups in Lebanon, in the mountains, somehow have these really advanced weapons, well, they're from British aerospace conduited through Saudi Arabia. So Obama, when he came in, promised the families of the victims of September 11th that he would release these 28 pages. Did he? No. But what he did do is he got the Solicitor General to grant full diplomatic immunity to the Saudi royal family so they can never be prosecuted for funding the original 9/11 and this latest attack. And Prince Bandar, who was the ambassador to Saudi Arabia and who was financing at least 2 of the hijackers, he is now the head of Saudi intelligence. So he has access to the entire network. And if you remember what President Putin said, and Putin is a very sharp guy, he said he was under pressure. How come Russia won't go with the UN? How come Russia won't support the overthrow of Assad? You know, you look at Libya, where Gaddafi was not a nice character, but what did he do? He got rid of his nuclear weapons. He complied with everything we asked, so what do? We invade his country and assassinate him. So that's a really good model. And then you have a bunch of terrorists take over, which is why the former Defense Secretary Bob Gates left. Okay, now we're about to do the same thing in Syria. So the Russians are saying, look, and Putin said this explicitly, he said, what the Americans are doing is they might as well let every single terrorist out of Guantanamo, give them weapons, and send them into Syria. And sure enough, one of the guys involved in the attack on the Libyan consulate was someone that we rounded up who was connected to Al-Qaeda after the original 9/11, put him in Guantanamo, released to Libya for rehabilitation, and lo and behold, he's involved in the attack on our consulate. Now, did Putin know this specific case? I think it's likely, other people said, but the generality is true. I mean, it's not, but the point is all of this is now coming out. This wasn't coming out before. And what the letters from the congressmen are saying is, look, you told us this. You said it was a spontaneous demonstration when we already knew that the attack occurred before the so-called demonstration. Then you find out there was no demonstration. Then you find out that the security was deliberately stripped. There was no security. And then you find out, one of the articles said that in Libya we had both of our eyes punched out. Well, because what do you have in consulates and embassies? It's not just people, it's documentation. In the case of the consulate in Benghazi, we had documentation of the Libyans who were working with the Americans supposedly to stabilize the new regime. So the terrorists now have the name, address, everything of all the people who were working with us, so they can all be eliminated. So this is what just occurred. And what you have now are very sharp statements, like the former Arkansas governor, Huckabee, who he actually said, I thought this was funny, he said, anyone who says that this attack on our consulate was just an accident might as well have said about the original 9/11, oh, that was just a mishap, the planes just got a little bit off track. And he said, everybody with 2 eyes and an IQ above plant life understands that what happened was not a quote-unquote spontaneous reaction to a 13-minute video on YouTube. Okay, then what has also occurred is they had a whole setup last week. I'm sorry, it's just so much. So Obama speaks Tuesday, gives this raving speech trying to cloak himself in the mantle of our murdered ambassador about how the U.S. really stands for peace, and like when he got the Nobel Peace Prize and invaded Afghanistan. Anyway, so he gives this crazy speech. The next day, Ahmadinejad, who probably has a script written by Queen Elizabeth, so he says a bunch of crazy things about Israel is irrelevant and we've had a longer, so he gives his crazy speech. And then Bibi Netanyahu, I mean, could this have been more scripted if they were like writing a Shakespeare play? So you have Obama, Ahmadinejad, and then the third day is Netanyahu, and he gets up there with a little, like an 8-year-old, and he writes this little thing that looks like a Christmas tree ornament, but it's a bomb. And he draws these red lines on his little Christmas tree ornament and says, when we cross this red line, we're gonna have to take action. And then Obama makes this totally crazy thing saying that if Israel does this or something, we cannot guarantee their security, right? So in other words, Obama says something in exactly such a way that Netanyahu can say, you see what I told you, we have to take things into our own hands. And this is the deal between Obama and Netanyahu, to have Israel go ahead and plunge us into thermonuclear war, which is what everybody is saying this would lead to. Because if they strike Iran, the way the different scenarios go and the war games go, Iran very likely would retaliate not by hitting Israel, but by hitting Americans. And if you kill a few hundred, right, and if you kill a few hundred Americans, then how does the U.S. not get involved? And if the U.S. is involved, how does Russia not get involved? And very, very quickly, you're in thermonuclear war. And that is what these scenarios are, but this is dawning on more and more people. So you have this uproar now finally in the Congress, and then you also had a rather amazing article in Haaretz, in the Israeli paper, where the one of the senior editors says, you know, Netanyahu is really unfit to hold office. Why doesn't someone replace him, right? And we're saying if in a little country like Israel, someone can have the guts to say our leader is unfit, what the hell is wrong with Americans? Who can't they say Obama is unfit? He should be thrown out of there right this minute. So you have that. Then you also had a kind of amazing article in Foreign Policy Journal, which is a very lengthy article with interviews from General Dempsey, Bobby Ray Inman, who all basically say this would be insane. If Israel were to strike Iran, the first response from the US would have to be ceasefire. In other words, don't escalate, just stop. And then they said the second response would also be ceasefire, and the third response would be ceasefire. That's the US military saying, we can't, we know where this will go. We can't. And then you had Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, who was here and who was on the Charlie Rose show. So Charlie Rose says to him, well, and he really was brilliant. He handled it totally brilliant. Here's this media personality jerk asking all these. Anyway, so Charlie Rose is saying, well, what do you think about the Arab Spring? And Lavrov says, well, it's really sort of an Arab autumn. And Rose says, well, what do you mean by that? And Lavrov says, well, what I mean is that we really hope we don't get a nuclear winter. Okay. And then Rose is kind of, shocked, right? So, I mean, it just gives you a picture that we're like a second to midnight. We are hanging by a thread, and it's not just thermonuclear war. You also have this question of hyperinflation, which Lynn and Helga keep bringing up. And part of the reason why they need the war now is if they don't get it now, they won't have the resources to run it. Because with $85 billion a month, and that's just the Bernanke twist and whatever, where we're buying back mortgage-backed securities from European banks, you're getting situations. You look at the food shortages, you look at the infrastructure breakdowns, and you look at the potential for hyperinflation where the dollar wouldn't buy anything. So it creates a pressure cooker where if they want to have a major war, they're going to have to do it before they lose control of the financial system. So these are the factors around the election. So then you think of the stupidity of Americans, and I'm happy to say a lot of people are getting over it. A lot of people are so sick of this party crap, but they have to know what to do. But people saying, oh, what party are you with? What party? No. Oh, we have to vote for Obama because the Democrats have to retain control of the Congress. We have to vote for Romney because the Republicans. No. The point is Obama is going to get us in thermonuclear war. If we get him thrown out, it turns over the chessboard. If we defeat him in the election, that at least contains him, right? And that's our option. And then the other option is what LaRouche keeps talking about, which is Glass-Steagall, credit system, build Nawapa, and it is a very, very stark contrast that while you have this spectacular, dangerous insanity going on, you have the Curiosity rover moving around on Mars. I think it went its record distance the other day. It's now discovered an absolutely irrefutable stream bed. So we know there used to be, running water. And it really is a choice for mankind. What's the identity of mankind? Are we a bunch of animals, like the oligarchs say, that we're distinct because we have an opposable thumb, and that's it? That's the source of our contribution to civilization is our thumb? Or is it something different, which is not perceived by the senses, not locatable, which is the question of human creativity? And can we inspire mankind to fight for that? That's the fight of the next 6 weeks, not a choice between idiots, although Obama has to be destroyed.
If Soros is running the Democratic Party, all the Democrats are going to do what Soros does. So if you get rid of Obama, that makes the other person, they'll all have the same.
No, actually, no. Here's the thing. First of all, Soros doesn't have that much power. People don't do what he tells them to do. He has a lot of control over the media, and he wants to legalize drugs and different things. But the big problem in the Democratic Party right now, why they didn't bust up the convention, is Bill Clinton. Because people think Obama won't be that bad because Bill Clinton is supporting him. And that's the killer. If Clinton were not supporting Obama, it's likely he would be finished. Already, I was thinking about it, the state of Washington, and I think also California, they didn't have party primaries. The Democrats in these states, and we saw it in New Jersey, they couldn't even get delegates for Obama. They would go to Democratic Party meetings and say, please, don't you want to go to the convention? We need delegates. They could not even get delegates for the guy. So there is no support for him, but because Clinton is popular and people think somehow Clinton presided over this great economy, which even Bill Clinton knew was a bubble, they say, oh, well, if he's with Obama, I guess it's, and that's the real issue. That's the real problem that you have in the party right now. Yeah, Alvin, what you're going to say?
Yeah, just that the last couple of weeks I've been out twice each week on deployments, and I just wanted to say that what I've noticed, spending about 2 hours, right, not the whole day,
Right.
but a real spike on two fronts. One, in terms of taking literature and engaging, but also a few more, but a greater level of hysterics from people too.
Yeah.
So both are up.
Right.
Dramatically in my experience that I've ever seen, and it just really reinforces to me where we're at, and how both the ability for people to free themselves of delusions and beliefs are there, but also where people really are going to start going crazy too.
Right.
On the other hand. So,
No, that's very true.
That's what I've seen.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the beginning of our discussion with Lynn on the candidates show last week, but he said, yeah, on the street, you find that people respond because you calm them down. Because people, frankly, if you really think the world is going to hell, you think there's a fire in the theater, and people say, oh, don't worry, there's no fire, you're gonna go, ah, you know, get more hysterical. Where if someone says, you're right, there's a fire, the whole thing is burning down, here's the way to the exit, that's actually not inflammatory. That actually allows people to take a breath and think about it, right? It's like if you're really nervous about something and people tell you, oh, just relax. It never works, right? So it is the case. I mean, people are very on edge. And the things that I used to flinch before saying, like, people will never get this, like they'll think thermonuclear war is an exaggeration. People don't think that. People really have a sense we're like this. And that's exactly why this can break. And the Libya thing can be the key to breaking Obama, because it's just not going away. And it's so in your face, outrageous. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up and let Daniel speak, and we can talk at the end. We now have more across the board. Yeah. No, this is in the United States, across the board. More people are committing suicide than are dying in car accidents. And as people know, because this has been going on for some time, there's a new type of suicide homicide. They're calling it familicide. There's just case after case where people go in, kill their whole family, kill their husband, their children, and themselves, or their wife, their children, and themselves, or their mother and themselves, because people feel that hopeless. And I have to say that the choice of presidential candidates does not do much to alleviate that situation. I mean, what LaRouche said the other day is that a drunk crossing the street is better qualified than either Romney or Obama. But if Obama wins, we are finished. And he won't wait, because a victory for Obama November 6th, remember when we had advance warning. We knew that W. Bush was going to go for cutting Social Security. So we had launched that campaign before the election, and we were ready to go you know, before he announced that he was going to do it. But you remember when he won the election for the second term, he said, I have a mandate, right? I can do whatever I want. So Obama, whose ego is like even 50 times, yeah, he wins the election, forget it, forget it. Conversely, Lyndon also said if he loses the election, that will go a great way in containing him for the rest of the year, because he will know, or his handlers will know, that he does not have a mandate, right? If he loses. We have to defeat him. We have to defeat him so we can live to fight the next guy. I mean, that's the only way to think about it. Right? I mean, the best thing, of course, and what I want to go through right now is that what's unfolding with the Libya events is the real possibility for impeachment or forced removal of Obama, because this thing is just exploding. And I don't know if people know, you've probably heard the quote from Shakespeare, "Murder, though it hath no tongue, will speak." Or what was famously the play by Friedrich Schiller called The Cranes of Ibycus, where you have this great poet named Ibycus. I mean, this past week, every week now is just absolutely huge. And I was reflecting on what Lynn had said about 3 weeks ago, which is that anybody who says that they can tell you what's going to happen between 3 weeks ago and the election is totally out of their mind, because we're in a domain where we're at a break point of many different aspects of the collapse simultaneously. It is a dark age. I mean, people may have heard now the number of suicides per day has surpassed the number of fatalities in car accidents for the first time. And he's on his way to the Coliseum, where there's going to be a great poetry competition, and he is beloved. And a band of highway robbers attack and kill him. And as he's dying, he looks in the sky and he sees a flock of cranes flying overhead. And he says to the cranes, "Avenge my death, avenge me." So then the scene shifts and you're at the poetry festival. And it's the open Coliseum, and everybody's very upset. They're saying, "Where is Ibycus? Where is Ibycus? Did you hear what happened?" And then they find out he's been killed. And Schiller describes it as the Erinyes, like the angels of justice, this very incredible tension in the crowd. Ibycus was murdered, Ibycus was murdered. And there's a